Benvingut, senyor Anwar. Primer de tot, com està Clara Ponsatí?
She's determined, she's resolute, and she wants to fight for justice, and she says that she will not allow the Spanish government to silence the voice of the Catalan people.
Vostè va ser aquí el 17 d'agost, va ser a Barcelona. De fet, es va salvar per molt poc d'aquell atemptat terrible que hi va haver a la Rambla de Barcelona. Com ho recorda tot allò?
Well, this is the first time I've been back since last year. I was speaking at the University of Catalunya STAD conference in Prades that year, and I came to Barcelona a day early to have some time off. I don't ever get time off. And it was horrific, because what I remember fondly of Barcelona that day, and in fact today, is that the Las Ramblas represents humanity. It's every race, colour, creed, religion, sexuality, young, old, on that street. And when the terrorists struck, to me, I was conscious that they didn't care whether you were Muslim, whether you were non-Muslim, whether you were Christian, whether you were Jewish. They wanted to strike at the heart of humanity because they hate it. So when that happened that time, it left me in a great deal of shock and horror, because you could see the bodies. The van only came when I was about to sit down in the Las Ramblas and have some food. It was really busy, and I decided it was too hot and too busy. So I remember my son, who's with me tonight, was 9 years old at the time, and he wanted to come to Barcelona, and he cried. And I said to him, "What do you want? I can't take you." So he said, "Get me a Barcelona Football Club t-shirt." So I remembered he said, "Get me a kit." So I thought, I'll get up, go and get a kit. Just at that point, I heard this noise, and when I turned around, it was a grinding noise, and everybody started to run. So instinctively, I started to run, and hundreds of people were running down Las Ramblas. And when eventually I stopped 5 seconds later, when I turned around, the van had stopped 10 meters away from me, and you could see the bodies. And you could, next to me, you could see a woman was screaming hysterically for her. I realized she was screaming for her children, because she couldn't see her children, and a young child who was the same as my youngest, who's 3 years old, was pulling, going, "Mama, mama." And the police were pushing us back with guns, and the policeman burst into tears, because I realized at that point she's lost her children. She didn't know where they were. So it was horrific, but it's beautiful to come back, because I wanted to come back to Barcelona. I didn't realize at that time that a year later, or 9, 10 months later, that we were representing Clara Ponsatí, because at the time I said to the people in the independence movement, if there's anything I can do, if there's anything that the people of Scotland can do, then we are united with you. We want to fight for the people of Catalonia. We want to support them and give unconditional support. So I'm glad to be back. The first thing I did do was to go to Las Ramblas and say a prayer for the people that lost their lives that day. And I went to the cathedral today, and my son and myself lit a candle and just prayed, because I hope that Barcelona and Catalonia never has to suffer that again.
El cap d'aquell operatiu, el major Trapero, suposo que sap que ha estat apartat del càrrec i que ara està investigat, pendent d'una causa a l'Audiència Nacional. Ho entén?
It's a disgrace, absolute disgrace, because I remember on that day I spoke on international TV and the UK media, and what I said was that the Catalan police that day were heroes and heroines. The fire service, the ambulance services, the emergency services, whilst everybody as civilians was running in this direction, the police and the emergency services were running in the direction of danger. And they were heroes that day, because they put their lives on the line. They didn't know when they were breaking down doors, when they were going into buildings, whether they were going to be blown up, whether they were going to be shot. And for the person, the hero of the hour, for him to now be treated in such a way when he has given a lifetime of service to the people of Catalonia and defended the honour of the people of Catalonia and stood up with such bravery and his officers to be treated in such a manner, many people in Scotland think it's disgraceful. That's the worst thing possible that could happen to a police officer who takes an oath to defend the public and to serve the community, to be treated in such a manner. Because for all I could see on the day of the referendum was that the only people who were responsible for violence against the people, for sedition or rebellion, were the Spanish security service and the Spanish police, who used their batons and their weapons on the people of Catalonia. And of course, when they went into the ballot stations, they didn't know whether the person was voting yes or whether the person was voting no. It didn't matter to them, because quite clearly it was just they were Catalonian people. But I see no Spanish police officers being prosecuted. Not a single one to date have we been given any information of a Spanish police officer being prosecuted, yet the hero of the hour who stopped the terrorists is being prosecuted. So, of course, people in Scotland are shocked by that and think it's disgraceful.
Ara vostè torna a Catalunya en un altre moment força especial, en aquest cas polític, evidentment, que és aquesta nou intent d'investidura en què Carles Puigdemont no s'hi pot presentar. Com ho interpreta tot el que està passant en la política catalana?
I don't really want to interfere internally in the Catalan politics. That's not really my role. I'm the lawyer for Clara Ponsatí. However, I have a great deal of respect for Carles Puigdemont, and maybe I will comment on it. I think that the Spanish government want a government to come about in Catalonia so that the people of Catalonia, not the people of Catalonia, I don't think they'll forget, but so that the European governments can be told, look, it's business as usual in Catalonia. Forget about the political prisoners, forget about the political exiles. Catalonia is getting on with business. And to a certain extent, I think the Spanish government is setting a trap for Catalonia, because they hope that people, of course, are getting frustrated and they want business to continue and to life to go on. But the only people who are responsible for this is the Spanish government. And I do not think that the parties in Catalonia, those who support independence, those who want the right to govern themselves, should fall into the trap. So it's a dangerous moment, because the stakes get higher and higher every day that go by. But as long as the Spanish government refused to negotiate, then I do not think that the Catalan Parliament should step into the trap that's been created for it. And fundamentally, I mean, for Europe, Carles Puigdemont is a figurehead. And as long as he remains in Germany, and people shouldn't forget, I mean, back in Scotland, people keep saying to me, oh, we can win Clara's case. And I say to them that no, whether we win Clara's case against extradition, it's not winning. It's a small step, because as long as Clara Ponsatí, as long as Carles Puigdemont, as long as the other politicians remain in exile, then we're losing, because they should be able to come home to Catalonia one day. They should be able to walk the streets of Barcelona and the towns and the villages that they come from. And nobody should forget them. They should remain the figureheads of the movement for independence.
Vostè ha dit en alguna ocasió que Clara Ponsatí no tindria un judici just a Espanya. Per què?
It's obvious. When you look at the fact that, first of all, that the Spanish government ministers who've expressed themselves in public so viciously, they have pronounced the guilt of these individuals, they have dictated with the media that these people are guilty, and the allegations that remain in the case that we will run in Scotland is that the judiciary is not impartial. It will not run a fair trial, and that's the allegation that we make. We believe that the judiciary for a very long time has not been independent, and that this is a political persecution and prosecution of Clara Ponsatí, as well as the other political exiles and those who are in custody in Spain at this point. And on that basis, if it's a political prosecution, then how can it be independent? How can it be fair? How can it be impartial? And why should those people trust the Spanish judiciary? And more so, it's a case of, when I look at 56 pages of the warrant, and it says that my client, Clara Ponsatí, is guilty of rebellion with violence, And I go through the 56 pages and I go, right, where has she done it? When did she use a truncheon? When did she use plastic bullets? When did she kick a policeman? When did she punch a policeman? When did she send in, her supporters in riot gear to attack the police officers? I can't find a single instance. And it appears to me that we have accused the Spanish government of using the European arrest warrant as a tool of political repression. It's not just about silencing Clara and the other politicians, it's about silencing the voice of the Catalan people. And we find that surprising in Scotland because we had our own independence movement and we voted. And sadly we voted against independence. We came close, one day we will get independence, but we were given the right to do so because that's a human right. And for some reason the Spanish government are not giving something that's internationally recognized as a human right. Whether the people of Catalonia vote yes or whether the people of Catalonia vote no, that should be their decision to do so. Yet in every aspect it talks about independence, the right to not to do so, and we cannot see how it is that this could be anything other than a political trial. As long as it's a political trial, then it stands accused of not being fair and not being impartial.
És aquest un cas de drets humans?
Yes, we have said that we fear for Clara's safety. The first issue is that this case, we understand, will run before the Supreme Court. We believe the very fact is that the Supreme Court means that there is no right of appeal, and that's unacceptable. If somebody is to receive a sentence of up to 33 years, as Clara is threatened with, ultimately, Clara, respect, is 61 years old. That's almost like a death sentence. And I know when I said this publicly, a lot of the Spanish media and commentators attacked me and abused me on social media and said, there's no death sentence in Spain. But what else does that mean for somebody who's 61 to spend 33 years of their life in prison and to have no right of appeal? That's almost like saying the Supreme Court is infallible. Nobody's infallible apart from God. And the Supreme Court certainly is not God, but they are acting like God. And so that's the first issue, no right of appeal. The second issue is the treatment of people who are being locked up by the Spanish authorities, where you can have detention without trial for up to 4 years. You're taken several hundred kilometers away from your families, kept in a cell with no contact, little or no contact with the outside world. No idea of when you will actually stand trial. And then the third aspect, of course, is that we believe that's degrading, inhumane treatment. No right to a fair trial is Article 6, breach of your human rights. It's a political prosecution, it's a political persecution. And also fundamentally, I believe that how can the Spanish government guarantee the safety of Catalan politicians in a Madrid prison, in a Spanish prison? Because you cannot appear to trust the Spanish police with the treatment of the Catalan people and the Spanish politicians. So how exactly will you trust the prison guards? And if you can't trust the prison guards, how can you trust the prison guards to guard the prisoners when there is a Catalan politician amongst them? So there is concerns for safety and for the human rights in that aspect. And all of this is wrapped up in human rights, and human rights at the end of the day trumps the Supreme Court. Because whilst the Spanish government is moaning about Germany and moaning about Belgium, and I hope very soon they will moan about Scotland too. The issue is Europe came about, European Union came about because of the Holocaust, because of Adolf Hitler, an old friend of Franco. Came about because of that human rights, the words that we use, would never again will this be happening in Europe, and that is why I find it so shocking. That is why the people of Scotland and the United Kingdom find so shocking what is happening on their doorstep. Because this isn't Russia, it's not somewhere in Africa, it's in the heart of Europe, and I have described it as the shades of Francoism. Because it's almost as though Franco is still alive and dictating to the security services, to his government, this is what you should do to crush and to silence the voice of the Catalan people. Now that is an abuse of human rights, and when I said that we see the European arrest warrant as a tool of political repression, it's almost, I think, an attempt to criminalize the aspirations of the people for freedom or the right to vote. And when I say right to vote, a lot of Scottish politicians haven't decided one way or the other. What they're saying is people have a right to vote. We take it as a human right, as a right that's granted. And for me, for the life of me, I cannot see what what is it that Clara is actually accused of? She's accused of 2 crimes. One, rebellion with violence. Prove to me, show us where the violence is. We cannot see one aspect of it. And the other, of course, is misappropriation of public funds. Well, from what I understand, the Spanish government has already said there was no misappropriation of funds. So can they make their mind up? First of all, you have a judge who issues a warrant, and then you have a finance minister who said, no, there's no misappropriation of funds. So they don't seem to know themselves what they're doing. And if they don't know what they're doing themselves, then that is an abuse of the European arrest warrant. That is an abuse of the human rights. And I think it's a systematic attempt, and I heard the words that were used by the government was they wish to decapitate the Catalan government. And if they want to decapitate the Catalan government, what they mean is they want to silence the Catalan people. And that is an abuse of freedom of expression. It's an abuse of human rights. It's an abuse of the right to political assembly. It's an abuse of the right to have your own destiny. And in a European country, that is horrific. Because when in 1952 the European Union and the Strasbourg Code came about, it was to make sure that never again would we have the politics of fascism on our streets, that democracy would always be the #1 issue. Yet we don't seem to be seeing that anymore, and that's sad, that is very sad.
A més, aquesta setmana el jutge Llarena ha obert la porta a rebaixar la petició de delicte de rebel·lió a sedició. I això dibuixa un panorama una mica diferent que, si li sembla, la Núria Pereira ha estudiat i ara ens explica a la pantalla gran. Núria, bona nit.
Aquesta setmana el jutge Llarena ha pres diverses decisions. Una, a oferir la possibilitat que Puigdemont sigui extradit per sedició i no per rebel·lió, i una altra, per primer cop en una interlocutòria, contempla la possibilitat de rebaixar el delicte als processats. Veiem com ho feia això en aquest document, aquesta interlocutòria que hem llegit aquesta setmana. Deia que les acusacions poden acusar per sedició i també deia que no es pot excloure la conspiració per a la rebel·lió. Què vol dir això? Per què és important? Doncs perquè contempla una baixada de les penes. En el delicte de rebel·lió, la pena màxima, i sobretot amb l'agreujant de malversació, és dels 25 als 30 anys, és un delicte contra la Constitució. En el cas de la conspiració per rebel·lió, la pena màxima és de 12 anys i mig a 25 anys. I en el cas de la sedició, que no és un delicte contra la Constitució, és un delicte contra l'ordre públic, aquí la pena màxima està entre els 10 i els 15 anys. Això és el que obria la porta aquesta setmana Llarena amb aquesta interlocutòria, una interlocutòria, aquest document, que es pot recórrer a la sala d'apel·lacions del Tribunal Suprem. I un cop sigui recorregut a aquesta interlocutòria, a principis de juny es contempla que seria la data en la que la sala d'apel·lacions resoldria i, per tant, aleshores, la interlocutòria de processament de Llarena ja seria ferma. Què vol dir això? Algun cop s'ha dit que si és ferma i continuen processats per rebel·lió, els que estiguin a la presó podrien ser suspesos de càrrec públic si és que el tenen, però veurem finalment què passa. Sigui com sigui, el judici es vol que sigui a la tardor. I perquè això no es posposi, no es retardi, que el judici sigui a la tardor, què ha fet també aquesta setmana el jutge Llarena? Ha decidit dividir la causa. Els que han comparegut presencialment davant seu són els que serien jutjats a la tardor i la resta són els que estan pendents d'extradició. Així els processos d'extradició no alentirien el procediment. I en quin moment estan aquestes extradicions? A Alemanya, Puigdemont, aquesta setmana, Llarena ha enviat un informe al tribunal alemany dient, com dèiem, que si no és extradit per rebel·lió, doncs ofereix que pugui ser extradit per sedició. Veurem això, quin recorregut té. A Suïssa, recordem, està fora de la Unió Europea, els processos d'extradició són molt més complicats i recordem que l'extradició està demanada per Rovira, però no per Anna Gabriel. Què passarà a Brussel·les la setmana que ve? Dia important, dimecres, perquè Comín, Sarrent i Puig compareixen davant el jutge que ha de decidir sobre la seva extradició i ho faran després que durant aquests dies la Fiscalia belga ha demanat més informació a Llarena perquè tenien dubtes sobre el delicte de rebel·lió i també el de malversació. I finalment, a Escòcia hi tenim a Clara Ponsatí. El judici de Clara Ponsatí és a finals de juliol, però la setmana que ve, dimarts, Clara Ponsatí, amb el nostre convidat, tenen una vista preliminar d'aquest judici.
Què creu que acabarà passant en el cas de Clara Ponsatí? L'acabaran jutjant per sedició, per un delicte inferior, l'extradiran? Què li passarà a la seva clienta?
Well, I think that I find that ridiculous because I said earlier on, can't seem to be able to make their mind what to do. And I think that the Spanish government were very arrogant in what they have done, because they assumed automatically that the European countries who have been supporting them, you know, that's deeply shameful that they have, after the referendum, the European countries all supported them, and they thought that when they had this discussions with their friends that they would automatically send people like Clara back to Madrid, and they haven't, so they failed, because the overriding principle was one of justice and one of human rights. So now what they seem to be doing is to trying to fit the piece into the jigsaw and say, right, that doesn't work, we'll try something else, we'll try something else. That's not how it works. And the courts will be very aware of the fact that you can't do this. You can't continually keep changing the rules of the game to try and get them back. And the second issue, of course, in Scotland is we don't have the crime of sedition. We don't have the crime of rebellion with violence. We don't have those offences, and that's one of the arguments that we will make. And it's all very well that the judge says, oh, we'll reduce it to 12 to 25 years. Well, with respect, I am a criminal defence lawyer. And in Scotland, my clients who have been accused of murder or killed people, they don't even get 25 years in prison. So why 25 years? For what? Because you have organised a vote? Because you wanted the people to have a right to decide? Again, that it becomes an issue, because is the crime, the punishment appropriate for what you are accused of? And the other issue that arises, which we've looked at, is if it was so wrong, why didn't the Spanish government, when the people stood as candidates for their election in Catalonia, why didn't they ban them then? Why didn't they stop them having in their manifesto that they want independence? Why didn't they say it's a criminal offence? Why do it after the Catalan government has decided this is what they're doing, because they had the mandate from the people to do that? They took the vote in Parliament and went, this is what we're going to do. Then after that they invoke 155, Article 155. So I think they're getting desperate, and they're deliberately changing the rules of the game. The problem for them, of course, is whether it be in Germany or whether it be in Belgium, and hopefully in Scotland, the judges, the judiciary will be well aware that this is a desperate attempt by the Spanish government and those who act on their behalf to not be humiliated in public. And they seem to believe that the Spanish law is admired and respected around Europe. No longer, because people are now starting to ask questions, how can they do this? How can they do this? Because if this happened in Scotland, people will be saying, you can't have one charge one day, and then the next day you charge him with different offence, and then the third day you charge him with a different offence, and that's all they seem to be doing. They need to make their mind up.
Senyor Anwar, tenim 4 periodistes a plató i segur que volen fer-li preguntes. Vols començar tu, Neus?
Sí. Després de la descripció que ha fet de com funciona la justícia a Espanya i també, en part, també el sistema policial, vostè creu que Espanya és un estat de dret?
No, I think there is a rule of law, but when it comes to the question of the Catalonia and Catalonian politics, the rule of law seems to fail. I think at that stage, because people are very confused, because when they look at Spain, of course, it's part of Europe, it's a democracy, it has human rights, etc. Yet that seems to revert to, and I've described it publicly as shades of Francoism, because when you have 6,000 Spanish security state services come in and several thousand Spanish police come in, and they attack the people who are innocent, who are men, women, old, young, who have done nothing wrong, and use violence, well, that's not the rule of law. That's an abuse of the rule of law. And when you have a system that refuses to prosecute those police officers, then that's a failure of the rule of law. Those things don't take place in a democracy. They normally take place in a dictatorship. And yet we are yet to see, even though today I think the European Union, or in the last few days the European Union, has finally, after 9 months, said, oh, we're going to investigate and carry out an inquiry. Too late. They should have done it in the first day. They should have done it in the first week, when people from Catalonia were screaming and saying, we want justice, we want an investigation, we want Europe to come and investigate, we want the United Nations to come and investigate. They failed. So 9 months later, it's too late. But the rule of law does not appear to apply when it comes to Catalonia. It's Spanish rule of law applies, and that's not fair, because Catalonia, of course, has its own government. And the example I give is, if tomorrow Nicola Sturgeon, who's the First Minister for Scotland, decided she wanted an independence vote again, if Theresa May, the Prime Minister, sent 7,000 members of the Metropolitan Police, the London Police, and several thousand troops to Scotland to punch, to kick, to use violence and tanks and etc. against the Scottish people, we would be independent within 24 hours because the Scottish people would say, no, that's not the rule of law. That is oppression, that's colonialism, that's dictatorship. What else can you call what took place on the 1st of October?
Voldria demanar-li quin futur veu els companys de govern de Clara Ponsatí que són en presons espanyoles. Si la justícia espanyola els condemna, si veu que tenen possibilitats apel·lant al Tribunal d'Estrasburg, i això, en qüestió d'anys, si es revisés aquesta pena, en fi, quants anys podrien trigar per sortir en llibertat?
Sadly, I think the wheels of justice in cases such as these turn extremely slowly, but I think people right across Europe are fully aware of the fact that every day that passes with the Catalan politicians in Spanish prisons, their lives are at risk. And whether it be because you're suffering from an illness and the judiciary refuse or the prison authorities refuse to provide you the drugs and the medication, or whether your life is at risk from prison guards or fellow prisoners, it's still at risk. Or the very fact that you're separated from your family hundreds of miles away is an abuse of your human rights, it's mental torture. I think that the only way that those people will actually see justice is either in Strasbourg, or the Spanish government has to understand there is only one way to resolve this, and it's through peaceful negotiation. It's not by locking up people for the crime of using the right to vote. And until they realize that one by one, I think it will be like what they call a domino effect. One by one, European nations will eventually start to realize this is unacceptable. They are exposing themselves. It's almost as though in Scotland, often we all talk, we wonder what, it's like every day there's something new. We watch what the judges are saying, we say what Spanish government ministers are saying, every day something new, some abuse, some public abuse or some abuse of the system, and we think, what are they doing? And we think, they don't actually seem to care, because they just seem to be appealing to the lowest common denominator in Spain and hanging on for votes, when in fact, they want to talk about corruption, then talk about corruption of the Spanish government. Talk about the court cases they face. Talk about the investigations of them. So how are they, this double standards appear to be applied, but they have no option but to negotiate one day, because I do not think that the way things are that people can compromise. As long as Catalan politicians remain in Spanish prisons, the Catalan people have no option but to fight on their behalf. This is almost like a peaceful revolution on behalf of the Catalan people, but in terms of the Spanish government, as long as they refuse to negotiate and treat people like that, they have to realize that there can be no negotiations. The number, I believe, that it has to be unconditional, that those politicians must be released unconditionally, and not unconditionally. I don't mean release them and say you can never stand for public office again, because that again is an abuse of their rights. They have to be released, and then negotiations can begin.
Israel García Juez.
Good night, Mr. Lawyer. Allow me to ask you some question in Spanish, please. ¿Usted no sabe que dentro de la Constitución española no se puede declarar unilateralmente la independencia de un territorio, y que es un agravante, lógicamente, cuando eres autoridad? Cuando se produce este hecho, los jueces españoles llaman a la señora Ponsatí a tomar la declaración. La señora Ponsatí escapa, digamos, de la justicia española y toma un camino que, bueno, que primero le lleva a Bélgica y después le lleva al Reino Unido. Aquí lo que se ha producido, señor abogado, yo entiendo que usted esté en su obligación de defender a su clienta, pero yo lo veo relativamente sencillo y no entiendo esas sombras de dudas, esas mezcolanzas que hace usted de una serie de cuestiones. Por cierto, en prácticamente, creo que son 3 o 4 constituciones, solo en todo el mundo se permite esta independencia. Pero a lo que voy es, su clienta ha cometido un delito y se ha escapado de la justicia española.
Well, the first thing I'd say is this is a perfect example of where members of the media have already pronounced the guilt of my client. My client hasn't stood trial yet, but you're already saying she's guilty.
No,
Let me finish. You asked the long question, so let me finish. So,
sí, però serà difícil si no el diàleg. Deixa que respongui, sisplau.
The first thing I'd say is innocent until proven guilty. The second thing I'd say is tough If the Spanish government say it's illegal, there's lots of things that governments around the world have called illegal. In America, black people didn't have the right to vote. Once slavery used to be legal. And people say, and even in Scotland, some politicians have said, oh, the Spanish government declared it unlawful, therefore they're correct. Just because the Spanish government say something's illegal or unlawful doesn't mean it's right internationally. There is a fundamental human right, which is a right to self-determination, that is guaranteed under the United Nations, and it's a fundamental human right. So that's the first thing. So when the people decide themselves, and when the devolved government decide that they want the right to vote for independence, then that should be accepted. The best thing the Spanish government could have done was to allow the Catalan people, what were they scared of? Because that's the question I ask. If they had simply allowed and actually resourced and helped the Catalan people to have a referendum and then fought the referendum where the one side, who are the unionists, say no, we want it to remain with Spain, and the other side say no, we want it to become Catalonia, then so be it. That's what happened in the UK. And in fact, the unionists won. Scotland voted against independence. So that's the first thing I'd say in that. With regards to my client evading justice, how can you evade justice if there is no justice? The only people that we saw evading justice were 7,000, what's been claimed publicly as several thousand police officers, state security forces that came into Catalonia that day and attacked the people. If you want to talk about justice, then name me one police officer that is standing trial for attacking, brutally attacking, punching, kicking, and attacking a people who had done nothing wrong. And the answer is zero. It seems to me that you want to talk about justice where you can see people who are police officers get 9 years for the brutal rape of an 18-year-old woman, and it's told, and we are told that it's not violence. Yet a female politician, a politician who has never committed a criminal offence in her lifetime, who is an esteemed professor, an academic professor, who was selected because of her background, and 2 months as an education minister, can receive 33 years in prison? Where's justice in that? There is no justice.
Si vols una rèplica? Però Israel, però breu.
Sí, no. Simplemente decirle que la Constitución española permite todo tipo de reformas siempre que se cumplan los cauces de la ley. Me sorprende profundamente escuchar a un jurista como usted que ponga absolutamente en tela de juicio todo un Estado de Derecho de un miembro de la Unión Europea. Pero bueno, repito, usted, en fin, está en su derecho de defender a su clienta, no puedo añadir más. Y yo no digo nada, lo dicen los jueces españoles.
Well, can I just say in relation to that, doubting the EU rule of law, what you appear to be implying is that we shouldn't have the European Human Rights Act. We shouldn't have the European courts, because what you're saying is every European country is right. In fact, we're not, because in England, they have been deporting people who have been living in England and in Scotland and the UK for some 40, 50 years, and they had British citizenship, and Theresa May's government was responsible. We had to use the Human Rights Act to expose the government because we said the government was wrong and it was unlawful and it was wrong. And with regards to the Spanish government, so what if the Spanish government says it's lawful? The Spanish government still gives money to Francoist institutions. As far as I'm concerned, Franco was a terrorist, a state terrorist, was involved with the murder of innocent people, and many people across Europe think that way. But of course the Spanish government will say that's legal. People like myself and others will say that's illegal and it's unlawful. And for me it becomes a question of, is it what one country says is legal, or is it the higher justice? And that is a question of natural justice, international rules, UN rules and European rules. Those are actually more important than what the Spanish government says. And how can you say that go through the normal procedures if everything the Spanish government says you can never ever vote for independence? So how can you then say that's legal? Because you have not given the right to the country. You cannot.
Es que hay un señor que se llamaba Ibarretxe que fue al Congreso de los Diputados, pero bueno, y que diga lo de las subvenciones de Franco, pero pues eso es que...
Avancem, sisplau, Laia, sisplau.
Recupero el fil de la pregunta que feia la Neus, sobre si és un estat de dret, que vostè ho ha circumscrit, ha posat en qüestió que es garanteixin els drets a l'estat espanyol circumscrit a Catalunya. Però ara ens trobem, per exemple, que aquest dilluns s'acaba el termini d'entrada a presó d'un cantant de rap que es diu Valtònic. Ens trobem que hi ha tot un grup d'altres cantants que també tenen l'amenaça d'entrar a presó. Ens trobem que hi ha un tuitaire basc que ja està a presó complint un any de presó. Ens trobem en moltes altres situacions i d'altres de fa temps, fins i tot això que parlàvem de l'acostament dels presos en el cas basc, per exemple, en altres situacions també en què es podria dir que a l'estat espanyol s'han traspassat algunes línies vermelles del que entenem per estat de dret des del propi estat. No sé com ho veu, això.
I agree with everything you say there. It's horrific that for a democracy in Europe, and you mentioned earlier on about Les Ramblers, and what I said at the time was that those terrorists hate what to me Barcelona represented that day, which is the love of music, the freedom to express oneself and how you dress and live and dance and talk and all these issues. For a government to actually take action against somebody who uses rapping, poetry, music, that happens in dictatorships. That happens under fascism. So to lock somebody up for 3.5 years is disgraceful, is shameful, and all of Spain should be rising up and saying, we will not accept that. That is unacceptable because Franco is supposed to be dead. It's not supposed to be his ghost is still directing, saying, don't allow that and don't allow that. So on that basis, I think it's wrong. The second issue that will arise from this is that more and more I keep seeing cases, because obviously now we have a deep interest in what's happening in Spain. And even today I saw in the news about the woman whose arm was broken, an elderly woman whose arm was broken, and it was decided that she was responsible for her arm being broken, not the Spanish police, because she was running away. Not the fact that you're being chased by robo-cops with batons, and everybody's seen it. And I've still yet to see a Spanish politician, I've still yet to see a Spanish judge, I'm still yet to see the gentleman there condemn the violence of those people who were armed to the hilt with batons and weapons, able to do whatever they want, and to sing the songs of Franco's. We saw it, we saw the translation, we heard it, and yet we see no response to that. If that's one way, that's one-sided, that's not democracy in action, that's not the rule of law in action, it's an abuse of the rule of law, and it makes me very sad because I do not believe that the Spanish people want that to happen, because there were many people in Spain who were against what took place in the past, and they thought that ghost had been buried, they thought it had gone forever. For instance, in Glasgow, and in Scotland, there is a tradition of the international brigades, hundreds of people who left Scotland in the 1930s who came to Spain and who fought against Franco and fought and died for those beliefs, because they died for freedom of expression, the freedom of politics, freedom of democracy. Yet for some reason that doesn't apply anymore. Why not? And why do we not see more voices in the Spanish Parliament and those political parties that talk about human rights, trade unionism and all those rights, yet for some reason they seem to switch off or silence their ears. They close their ears when it comes to Catalonia. They should be, those individuals, whether it be the rapper, whether it be the woman who's being chased by the police and whose arm is broken, whatever the pictures are, they should be publicly supported by people in Spain, by the government politicians, by the ministers. They should be speaking out against that, and they should be calling for justice. And until they do so, then they disgrace their own country. They disgrace the idea of justice. They disgrace their courts. They disgrace the police. And it's a return to the past. There's no other explanation for it.
Senyor Anwar, l'han escollit millor advocat d'Escòcia del 2017. Com es fa per ser el millor advocat?
I think I would have to pay tribute to the people that I represent. I myself became a lawyer because back in 1991, when I was a student, I was an anti-racist campaigner. And at that time, I saw the brutality of the police. I was chased by the police. We were organizing a demonstration. I was chased by the police into a dark lane near to my university. And I was attacked by the police, and they took my head and they smashed it off the pavement and they knocked my teeth out repeatedly, and then took me into lane and kicked me in the stomach, and they told me that this is, and I asked the question when I woke up, no teeth in my mouth, crying, 21 years old, frightened. And I asked the question why, and they said, this is what happens to black boys with big mouths. And there was 2 lessons that were learnt that night by the Scottish police, by myself and by the Scottish police. The first lesson was learnt by the police, and that was that this black boy's mouth got bigger as the years went by. And the second lesson that was learnt by me was that freedom and justice isn't handed to you on a plate. You have to fight for it. And over the years, after that, I decided I would become a lawyer. And over the years, I've represented many families and many individuals who are at the state. And it isn't just a case of Spain being wrong here. I'm not saying Britain is superb. It certainly isn't. I'm not saying Scotland is superb, because we've had to raise cases against the government. We've had to raise cases against the Scottish government, the police service, UK government. We continually do that to expose, you know, the brutality of the police, and you know, to expose injustice and the fact that families and individuals sometimes can feel frightened and be on their own. And those people who fight when they've lost everything are the ones who give me confidence to stand up and to fight. I get called a campaigning lawyer, but my campaigning and my strength comes from those people I've stood shoulder to shoulder with. And some of those individuals are people whose children were murdered and then spent many years fighting for justice until finally we got justice. And they always give me, they give me the honour of supporting them. And now I have the honour of supporting Clara Ponsatí, because I see it as an honourable issue that an individual like that should be supported. So maybe that's some reasons why I got the award Lawyer of the Year. So, but you're embarrassing me now. So.
Vostè és del Barça, està content amb el doblet, la Lliga i la Copa del Rei?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I think on the first, I think everybody noticed on the first time I gave, I think Clara's warrant was issued on a Friday. Clara contacted me on a Saturday. On the Sunday, my children were in the house. They're aged 10, 6 and 3. My 10-year-old is in the back. He's still demanding I take him to Camp Nou tomorrow before I fly back. I bought 2 Barcelona ties, and I thought, oh, one day I'll get to wear them. So cheekily, I put the tie on, and then many people, thousands of people noticed when zoomed in and went, is he wearing a Barcelona tie? So yes, no, support for Barcelona. It's a great team. It's a great tradition. It's a great historic tradition as well of the fight against fascism, of the fight against Francoism, and what happened during the 30s. So I mean, that's something that I think the people of Catalonia and the people of Barcelona can be very proud of, but people elsewhere are also proud of that tradition and you know, instinctively support that team. Because somebody asked my son today in a shop, because he had his Scotland hat on, and which team do you support? And he went, Celtic and Barcelona.
Senyor Anwar, un plaer que hagi vingut aquesta nit al Preguntes Freqüents a TV3.
Thank you.
Un honor, moltes gràcies.
No, thank you so much. Thank you.
Ara fem una pausa i tornem de seguida.
The winner takes it all. The loser standing small beside the victory. That's her destiny.
I was in your arms, thinking I belonged there. I figured it made sense.